Welcome to the news review segment on the AM show. I'm Sweetie Abochi, and I have a really great panel of guests this morning. Joining me in studio is Andrew Appiah-Dankwa. He's a legal practitioner and spokesperson for the Movement for Change. And then I have Dr. Ekuya Mwako, member of the NPP Communications team, and Dr. Kwamina Mintanyako, member of Parliament for Cape Coast North. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the news review segment.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, so Appiah-Dankwa and Ekuya, you know that we give our guests about 2 minutes tops to walk us through any topical issue you want to reflect on. So, Doc, I'll come to you last. I want to start with you. Appiah-Dankwa, what's on your mind? Please take me to Parliament.
A good morning once again. Always a pleasure to share this platform with you. And Doc, first I'm meeting you. As for my big brother, we've met an excellent guy. Having had the opportunity of congratulating him on his weekend.
Thank you. I appreciate
that. Yeah. I have no choice but to go to Parliament. Yesterday, I just saw it this morning.
Right.
I saw it this morning and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it, especially so when, for some of us, our view has been, how do we sustain this democracy? And in my mind, one of the key factors you need to sustain democracy is to create a right political culture that would tolerate diverse views. So, where wasn't the home of democracy? You see, where you have the representation of the people, they simply can't find a way to tolerate diverse view or to disagree without resorting to
fisticuffs and throwing chairs.
In fact, I want to use the word fighting. I don't want any confusion.
Yeah.
Without resorting to fighting. Then, for me, it's beyond it being inexplicable, as in we shouldn't also tolerate it, and serious questions needs to be asked. Indeed, property of this country has been destroyed.
Yes.
So I saw some distractions. But then what's even more serious is the kind of message it tells us, the people. Because if our focus is to build a right political culture, that is going to hold political leadership accountable, then it's sad where the number one house for the purpose of accountability, for the purpose of being able to tolerate diverse view, can't find a way to hold themselves up for accountability and also to disagree without necessarily resorting to violence. So for me, it's a very sad day in our democracy, and it's over the past 5 years, it's been one too many. And it's even sadder when you see the people who are supposed to be the leaders of the house, because from the video I saw the minority leader, I saw the minority chief whip, who just 2 days ago was on Parliament chastising somebody for apparently disrespecting him. And I see these people leading, in my view, a charge against democracy itself.
Right.
Yes, and so, for me, I think we should ask questions, and we should create a system where these kind of things must not be tolerated within our body politics.
But the crux of the matter, whether or not they were right to request that they postpone the vetting process, because really it was late. Yeah. But let me throw that to you. Dr. Ekuya Mwako, what did you make of what happened yesterday in Parliament?
Well, I think firstly it's important to condemn any form of violence that goes on in the House of Parliament. But it's also important to look at what might have precipitated this violence. Before things at the committee happen, agreements are made. And then the agreement yesterday was to have a vetting of 4 people. It moves on to 6. Then it's about 11 p.m. and the majority wants to bully their way to have another 2 nominees vetted at the ungodly hour of 11 p.m. when they've been at it, I think, from midday. Then, I don't know if anybody saw the beginning of the video. My good friend here only saw members of the minority who were engaged in the scuffle. But the Honorable Dafia Mepo was also very much involved in it. I might even call him the instigator of the issue. There was so much negative energy and violence coming from the majority, such that the minority had to, as it were, defend themselves in that situation. Because it just smacked of bullying, a lot of bullying. That shouldn't be countenanced. And I think it all comes down to, from the past week, this week, there have been a lot of discussions as to the decorum that should be exercised in the House of Parliament. Another thing that I saw that I found very disturbing is the people that followed the nominees to Parliament, the common floor members, as it were, hooting at the minority leader, or I don't know, when did that start? I mean, members of Parliament to a certain level are even immune to some prosecution for behavior, acts that go on in the House of Parliament. That does not cover...
To some extent.
To some extent, yes. That does not cover the rest of us common floor members. So how do you go into someone's house to accost them and make them uncomfortable? That's something that we should look at. I think that the supporters that come with the nominees should be spoken to be guided as to where they are, and so that they behave accordingly.
Yesterday, I had a conversation with Sami Obeng, Parliamentary Network Africa, and the conversation was really about the integrity of this arm of government, how people take to social media these days and condemn members of parliament. I mean, the respect that we accorded members of parliament some years ago and what we see today is so different. You know, talking about Oliver Akavamawo being hauled before the appointment committee, that's where the conversation started. And so just yesterday, having a conversation about protecting the integrity of Parliament, and to wake up this morning and this happens. Luckily, we have a member of Parliament in our midst, so let me throw that to you. What does this do to your image as parliamentarians, and how do you feel about everything that happened yesterday?
Well, first of all, I want to use this opportunity to render an unqualified apology to the good people of Ghana, that as members of Parliament, we were able to go through what happened yesterday. I'm very embarrassed. I'm very disappointed. I don't think that as members of Parliament, we should push ourselves to that particular level. But sometimes we allow our sentiments to go beyond what we are supposed to do logically. And then if you see what happened there, I think Doc was just mentioning the fact that we have a lot more people coming into Parliament just to come and support members who are supposed to be vetted.
Yeah.
And that also accrued to that particular tension that goes on around the room, and then how some people express their sentiments regarding some specific questions that are posed. I'm also of the view that some of the questions really are not really important, especially so when we are asking the person's capability and capacity and then the person's ability to do the job. You ask me whether I have 2 wives or 1 wife, how does that got to do with the job that I'm supposed to do?
Yeah.
If you ask me whether or not I commuted from one point to another, what has that got to do with the job? We need to be asking questions that really would push the individuals to be able to come out with what they can really do to change the narrative in which respective ministry that they want to run. And if you're able to direct questions in that manner, I don't think we will sit for these long hours trying to either show muscles or otherwise do what is not appropriate. So for me,
smiling, but I'll come to you in a bit. I know you want to talk about how some people from the NPP side were vetted for close to 2 days.
Yes.
So you hold your horse for me. I'll come to you in a bit.
That's what I'm thinking. I am of the view, but I must commend the minority. Honestly, this is the first time that we've had a situation where members are vetted. We go into the chamber, they are approved, and then everything goes smoothly. Normally, it takes some weeks before that happens. So I would want to commend the minority for supporting the majority to make sure that this particular exercise will go on as smoothly as possible. Especially so when we just have 1 month that the president is able to get his ministers all approved. And I think it's a very good thing that the minority is doing. However, I would also want to plead with the minority that they should minimize the kind of questions and then steer the questions to a particular way that will rather elicit the capacity of the people and the ability to do the job.
Is it a question of the time, or is it a question of the kind of questions that are being posed? Which one is it for you? Because
for me, the timing is good because the minority has been able to allow that to happen. It never happened, and it has never happened, where we have a month where all ministers have been approved. In fact, 2/3 of the ministers have been approved. It's never happened. We need some weeks before, after the vetting, you go to the floor before we are able to approve them. But this time around, we could do that a day. A day after the vetting, they go into the chamber, we do the approval, and that's it. And that's why I want to commend the minority for that.
Okay.
But with the timing, which is appropriate, because we need to start working, And then the president is looking forward to start working with the ministers that he has
But
nominated.
I meant the time spent on one nominee.
That is
For
what I am
example, we
saying,
did close to 4 or 5 hours.
I don't think it's really
Sam
necessary.
George, yeah.
I don't think it's really necessary, especially so when everyone on the board or everyone on the committee is very much aware that all these nominees will be approved. So what was a waste of time for? I will be of the opinion that everyone should not last more than an hour. The point is, we've been in Parliament, they know them. So what is there that they need to know?
Then why, it begs the question, why vet them anyway?
We need to vet them
because going on that logic, it means the vetting process is just ceremonial.
No.
So you will be approved anyway,
the vetting
so why go
process
to vetting?
is to be able to ascertain whether the person has the capacity to do the job.
Yeah.
If indeed that person doesn't have the capacity to do the job, then it is in our mandate to ensure that the person is not approved. But then many of the nominees are MPs. We've been working with them all these years. And for that matter, we know them personally. And we know that at least 1 or 2 or 3 people will be able to man a particular ministry. So if indeed we have this particular notion, why the waste of time?
Okay, yeah. Amwako, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole point of vetting them beyond the appointments committee determining the capacity of the nominees to perform is for the people of Ghana to also be involved in the process. So I think it is absolutely in order for the nominees to be vetted for as long as is necessary. For the questions, I mean, some of them go to the credibility of the nominee, because yesterday we saw a lot happen at the vetting of the Honorable Sam George. I found it very interesting. Honestly, if I had my way, his would have taken 2 days as well, because there's a lot to unpack. The thing that shouted at me was the calling of Dr. Bawumia a religious prostitute, because that's something that has always disturbed me. And so that's what I actually intended to use my first minute for. Because we are essentially a secular country. I don't think Ghana is listed as a Christian or a Muslim. We're a secular country. So if a vice president is tolerant to all the 3 major groups, what is wrong with that? Isn't that what we should be emulating and commending him for having that religious tolerance and ushering in that new Ghanaian identity of having religious tolerance, whether you're a Muslim, whether you're a Christian, whether you ascribe to the traditional religion. That's something that should be encouraged, actually. But because of political expedience and to campaign, you go ahead to call the sitting vice president at that time a religious prostitute. And then you go on to almost refuse to take it back. I mean, I find that very interesting. And so these are things that Ghanaians have now been made aware of. And people are sitting around saying, oh, okay. But then if the current president, Honorable His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, goes to a mosque to pray with them. I saw him go to the chief imam and he goes to a church, all of that. There's no problem. But when the former Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, does it, he's called a religious prostitute, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. Again, it comes to the kind of conversation and the words that we use against each other as politicians. Because if we are using these words against each other, then we shouldn't be surprised that people on social media will also find really nice things to describe us. So if we want to command respect, we have to start treating each other with respect.
Because, of course, respect is earned.
Exactly.
So I get that point. I'll give you the last word before we get into the papers. Listening to both sides, what do you make of everything? You have some quick reflections, or should we go through?
Just to, in support of what Doc said, you see, I think the Constitution says that the President appoints ministers subject to the approval of Parliament. They have decided that they'll go by that approval by vetting. So that if rightly, like he says, you know the person, you can approve without necessarily vetting. Like
we saw for Lindo Klu,
because exactly, because the essence of the vetting is to ascertain for yourself whether or not the person has the capacity to man the ministry. So if you know the person, like the MPs know some of them, then I think really they shouldn't waste their time and a time by it. But to conclude, you see, we want to build the right political culture, a culture that will tolerate diverse views. You understand? And I think the best way of showing ability to forge that culture is in what happens in Parliament. And under no circumstance should MPs be seen to show any level of intolerance towards any view or any situation And under no circumstance should there be a sense that parliamentarians themselves cannot hold themselves accountable. You understand? Because in my view, that's the house of democracy.
Right.
And that's where, and they must reflect the positive cultures of our democracy.
Well, we'll get even more surgical with this topic when you get to our big story segment. So please stay with us. Let's get into the newspapers, and I will start with the beautiful lady among us. Okay, let's get into your paper.
What am I seeing? That's interesting.
I see some NPP scandal, something.
Oh my God, sweetie.
I would love for you to start.
There are many other interesting. Okay. I'm seeing a cholera outbreak, 43 dead. That's something that's been going on for some time. Okay, so here's something you can do. Just give us the headlines. If you don't want to get into it, that's fine. But the headlines, and then we get. Okay. So this is the Daily Democrats. So we have Prof. Nana Opoku Ajemain calls for infrastructure investment to advance Africa's single market. We have MPP chairman linked to stolen gold scandal, which we should definitely wait for more information before we can pass judgment. Debate over Dr. Fuswam Pofo's appointment. I don't see why there's a debate. Disability community rallies behind Jacob Atule. I don't know if I butchered his name, sorry. Amid YA appointment controversy. That's also something we've been seeing on social media, and I hope can be resolved quickly. Mahama appoints engineer Solomon Chumberima as MD for SIC. Then we have the Daily Searchlight. Close down Ghana's embassy in Washington and shut down U.S. embassy in Accra. Petition. Who has made that petition? Can we?
Yeah, let's get into that.
Let's see that. President John Dramani Mahama has been petitioned to close down the Ghana embassy in the United States and take steps to ask the government of the United States to remove its facilities in Accra. Why? The radical call is coming from Reverend Kwame Sefa Frimpong, who describes himself as the General Overseer and Secretary General of the Fulfillment Power International Ministry and National Association of Concerned Clergy based in Kumasi. The petition, which was copied to the Daily Searchlight, is dated 27th January 2025 and directed to the Office of the President, the Republic of Ghana, Flagstaff House, Accra. The subject is petition for the withdrawal of the Ghanaian embassy in the United States concerning deportation matters.
All right. I thought as much
about
the deportation. So too,
well, I guess that's something we can get into later. The cholera that I spoke about earlier. So I think it might be spreading out of the western region. Let me just find
yesterday I heard we had recorded 2 or 3 people dead. Last year was 21. So it looks like the death toll coming out of this cholera outbreak is increasing. Although we have vaccines now, I think there's also some skepticism about people taking the vaccines because they are not sure really what it does for them. People generally, I think, are anti-vax, so there has to be an intentional orientation. But over to you, gentlemen. What do you make of this outbreak of cholera? Maybe you can give us a little bit of context.
Okay, so Ghana's cholera outbreak has so far claimed the lives of 43 persons and a total of 480 infections, the Ghana Health Service has said. The cholera outbreak, which hit the country in October 2024, has spread to 5 regions now, including Greater Accra, Central, Western, Eastern, and Ashanti. Data from the Ghana Health Service indicate that as of January 21st, 2025, 30 persons were on admission at various hospitals. So I think that's big.
Dr. Nyako.
Yes, please.
Your thoughts on this cholera outbreak and the death toll? Did you say 40-something?
43.
Yeah,
that's a huge number.
Yeah.
And especially so when that is preventable. I think we need to rather push more for healthcare delivery to set up, especially so when we are privy to the fact that it's spreading. So if it's spreading, what steps can we take to be able to ensure that it does not go beyond the 43 people? And I want to use this opportunity to also express my condolences to members who have lost their loved ones through cholera. I think that we need to push more. And then this is a very good opportunity for me to also ask members of Parliament to expedite the vetting of the Minister of Health designate so that he'll be able to get onto his job and then make sure that all these things will be kept. I'm of the view that we are also members that are not being prudent with the way we live, especially so with health issues around ourselves. We are the ones that are always putting rubbish all around it. We just put refuse all around ourselves, and these are things that can also generate in whatever we are experiencing at the moment. So I also think that when we look more at how we can manage our rubbish, how we can manage how we dispose of rubbish, and how we can really take away or transport them to specific designated areas where we will not be able to have such negative effects on us. I think that will also be very good. And I will also urge the Minister of Local Government to also look at how they can resource all these respective constituencies or metropolitan assemblies so that they'll be able to have all these containers to make sure that all rubbish are disposed of appropriately so that we will not be able to have access to
Are you up to date on how your region or your constituency, because I hear the central region is bad. In fact, that's where we started hearing of the death cases.
It started in Takoradi.
It started in Takoradi, right?
It started with the Western region.
Are you Western region? But I mean, Cape Coast is right, you know,
Right.
the central
Yeah,
region. Are you updated,
Yeah.
on what's happening, how they're treating it?
Well, we are not really privy to the number of people that have passed in the central region yet. I think once I read through the bulletin, I'll be able to capture that.
Right.
But as the number keeps rising, I think it's very disturbing, and there's a need for us to look at how best we can curb it.
Apia Dankwa.
Yeah, I think the cholera issue, the perennial cholera issue is
Perennial.
Yeah, well, something you can predict that next year, you know, another.
Just like flooding, eh?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a massive reflection of our failure of leadership. Because it's not just a health issue, it's also a sanitation issue, it's also lack of regulation. Because if I'm to expand the duty of government to protect our lives, then that duty will also include that government takes steps to ensure that all issues that can impact the quality of my life, that can impact my life as in my dying, you understand, must be dealt with, and must be dealt with deliberately. As in, we have failed to actualize one of the fundamental visions of our constitution, to have a truly decentralized system. So because of that, there's a whole confusion as to who handles our sanitation issues. The regulator isn't doing much to ensure that food that we eat are wholesome. You understand? And for me, everything that we have done has created a situation where if we do not take care, cholera would also become something that threatens our very existence. And I think that we must be deliberate. We must ensure that beyond it being a health issue, we see it for what it really is. You understand? And an issue that goes beyond just health, but an issue that also goes or ventures into issues pertaining to sanity, pertaining to sanitation, to proper regulation of what's called the food people sell and all. So for me, is like I said, it's a fundamental failure of our system, and I think we need to tackle it holistically. Otherwise, every year we'll be talking about it, but nothing will be done.
I'll give you the final word, Doc.
Yeah, so I just did a quick search because I do remember that the numbers we were seeing from cholera outbreaks were much higher. So I guess that's something we have to, I don't know if the word is to say commend, because the numbers have dropped significantly. We used to be in the 3,000s and now it's about 400.
Thanks to the vaccine, I hear.
Not just that, because I don't think we do routine cholera vaccine. It's when there's an outbreak and then we set into vaccinates, but it looks like maybe a combination of more access to healthcare is helping to bring down the numbers. One thing that I didn't get to when I was reading it is it seems that the former Director General of the Ghana Health Service thinks that it was imported. The initial cases were probably imported from across our borders. So it just goes to show how issues like this have, they involve multiple facets. I mean, if it was truly imported, that means we need more surveillance at the borders, so that when we put in so many measures to make progress, we are not derailed. Again, I think my condolences are to those who've lost their lives and those who are currently in the hospital undergoing treatment. I'm very confident that the medical team in Ghana would do the best they can for them.
Someone is saying that this girl is too nice to be representing politicians. Dr. Kiamako, that's you. Oh. But let's get into your paper now, Apia Dankwa.
Yeah. So, I think the headline is Constitution must inspire trust, says the President of Ghana. And then AG abandons appeal against auto forcing. Ghana will be Africa's AI hub in 4 years. And the African Prosperity Dialogue creates single market to provide jobs for youth. I think the topic that obviously captures my interest is the Constitution must inspire trust, and with the permission, I will just go through it.
Yesterday we saw that the committee was sworn in.
Yeah.
It was a short and very straight to the point ceremony. I like that.
Yeah.
And Shamima, congratulations again. She's doing a good start to the job, Shamima.
Oh, she's a...
No, she sort of emceed or moderated the whole session. You know, she's deputy spokesperson to the president now.
Really?
Oh, yes, she is.
Oh, congrats.
Yes, she is. Yeah.
She did top post there.
I mean, she for chop. She really she fought the NPP boot for boot. So of course, let's get into the
So President John Dramani Mahama has charged the newly instituted Constitutional Review Committee to embark on a nationwide engagement with citizens from diverse backgrounds to ensure that the constitutional review process is inclusive and representative of all Ghanaians. The President emphasized that the Constitution must be a unifying force, inspiring trust, and providing a framework for a more just, equitable, and prosperous society. This Constitution must belong to all of us. It must inspire trust. It must unite us. It must provide a framework for a more just, inclusive, and prosperous Ghana, President Mahama said. President Mahama gave the charge yesterday when he saw members of the Constitution at a short ceremony at the presidency in Accra. So,
a lawyer, this definitely interests you.
Yeah, obviously, and let me say that our Constitution is a great one. Our Constitution is a great one, and our Constitution is set upon all the rights, values, and principles. And obviously, the focus is also excellent. The focus is to protect our lives, to protect our liberties, and to protect and to guarantee our rights to pursue our own happiness. I think the biggest problem with the Constitution, in my view, is the people of Ghana. I'm not saying it's perfect, because you take a country like the US, where their Constitution has less than 30 articles and a few amendments. That Constitution has served them very well for over 300 years, and you can fairly see that their society is a society that is fairly free and just. You go to a place like the UK where they don't even have a written constitution, and yet they can tell you that what you are doing is unconstitutional, because essentially the Constitution is supposed to represent a set of values and principles whose focus, like I said earlier, is to protect our lives, protect our liberties, and to protect our right to pursue our own happiness. Having said that, I think there are a few issues within the Constitution that needs to be reviewed. For me, one of the critical things that comes to mind easily is the issues that borders on the perception that governments witch hunt their political opponents. And I think when Nana Addo became president, he excited all of us with the idea of the Office of the Special Prosecution. My personal view is that I think we all got it wrong insofar as the framework that was supposed to deliver that kind of independent prosecutor was concerned. Because under our Constitution, all prosecutorial powers have been given to the Attorney General. Attorney General is appointed by the President. So the view is that the President can direct or influence how
they say that the President has too much powers.
Exactly. Now, my view is that instead of creating the Office of a Special Prosecutor by an act of Parliament, you understand, and without and simply making him like a sort of an agent of the AG. In my view, meant that you couldn't have an OSP that was truly independent. So I think that it is important that we have somebody independent that can handle some of these political, what's called corruption issues. I think to do that, the Constitution itself is to create that body. That's the Office of the Special Prosecutor. So that's one of the reviews I think ought to be done. Also, I think we must also have a look at this issue of whether or not to have the Minister for Justice and the Attorney General decoupled. I think we need to have a critical look at it. And then I think another very critical issue that we must have a look at, in my view, is whether or not we should have a strict separation of powers, or we should go along with this joint system we have now. I know people who argue for the system would make reference to what happened in 1979 Constitution, where we had straight separation. But once again, I think that my view is one of the biggest reasons why our Constitution we seem to be struggling is not because of the Constitution itself, but it's because of the people, the human beings.
Right.
We need a certain level of integrity to make this system work. So I think I need to commend the president for taking this constitutional review exercise seriously. For me, it's not because the Constitution is wrong, but after almost a generation having worked with I think
we've done 32 years.
Yes, with this, and we see some of the few issues. My view is that the biggest issue is the people themselves.
Okay.
But having said that, we can look at the people and then look at the Constitution and then see. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is the Constitution has served us well, but we need to review. But it also sounds as if the review committee have their work cut out for them. In fact, they have just 6 months to come up with a comprehensive report and what needs to be done. Dr. Mako.
Honestly, I think on this issue, I want to wait and see what recommendations they come up with, because, I mean, if a system is not broken, why go around trying to fix it? So
you don't think it needs fixing because it's not broken?
What exactly are they setting out to rectify in the Constitution? I don't think there's been a huge uproar about any stipulations in the 1992 Constitution that would require one of the first things the new president to do is to set up a constitutional review.
But this process started way back, somewhere in 2013 or so, right?
Yes.
And so if there was no need for us to review the
personally, I don't see
exactly
what they are setting out to do. I've heard people talk about it being to remove that clause that's enshrines that the president appoints from Parliament. You know, I've only heard issues that there's not like a national consensus that this is a problem, so we need to fix it. So I'm just thinking, I mean, in the first 1 month of office, when we have so many other issues, if this is not the biggest problem, why are we focusing on this?
Because the body politic runs on this constitution.
Yeah, but if you can't just change a constitution just because it's old.
Hold on. Last year, latter part of last year, we saw that impasse when Apenyo Maki ran to the Supreme Court seeking interpretation for some provisions. There are certain instances where it appears we need more clarity on some of these laws.
But do you agree
and who implements what and who does. And in fact, it can come all the way down to socioeconomic and social development issues like what we define as rape. Per the Constitution, a man cannot be raped, technically. It talks about penetration and all that. You see, there are certain things in there that is why they've set up a committee to just look at it holistically and
see if we
pick out the things that need to be reviewed and then see how we can approach it.
Granted, but you know, even if we get a new constitution in 6 months, there's still going to be we're still going to go to the Supreme Court over interpretation because it's not everything that will be agreed. You are not going to get a consensus of the whole country on the Constitution.
You don't think we need a
That's why we have the Supreme Court. No, it's not that I'm saying I don't think we need it. I don't think it is at the top of the priority list. Personally, because I've not seen anyone come up with, okay, so these are the problems, maybe A, B, C, D. Are the problems we have in the current constitution, and so let's set out to amend them.
There was a constitution review committee, and I remember the name of the leader. It was a woman. God help me, I've forgotten the name. I'll fish it out for you.
Yeah, and then
they came out with what needs to plenty
issues. And what happened with that committee?
Okay.
I don't know. I just feel like, again, that's why I said on this matter, I would just want to see what they come up with.
Okay. Let me throw that to Dr. Minton.
Well, thank you. I am thinking that it is appropriate for us to proceed with the constitutional review. And then that was started by the late Professor Mills. Yeah. And then unfortunately he wasn't able to get along with it because of his sudden demise.
Yeah.
And then at the time it was President Mahama who was a vice. And then he couldn't have that time to also take through. And I'm of the view that now that he's back, he is of the opinion that it's appropriate for us to do that. Let me give you a very interesting story. In Parliament, and we had 20 women in Parliament, and then this issue of who inherits what from a man came up. And then the ladies were asked that they wanted to review it, that if a man stays with a woman, whether a married man or a married man stays with a lady for 5 years, automatically they become married couples. And then if the man dies, the lady has access to the inheritance. Then the ladies were, no, what about the issue of side chicks? if my man is living with a side chick for 5 years and he dies, she has access to my stuff.
But isn't that common law marriage? Yeah.
They don't see the essence for that. So the women were against it. Now we have to come on and then identify exactly what should come in to be able to say that if you live with a man or you don't live with a man at this stipulated number of years, you are entitled or otherwise
I thought
not
the
entitled.
interstate succession law sort of, sorts that out.
Good, but that is part of the Constitution. We need to understand, as you said, Afenyo was seeking for interpretation. For what? It's in the Constitution. So why is he seeking for further interpretation? If indeed what is there clearly spells out exactly what has to happen. You see, the consistent desire to get to know what the spirit of the Constitution is will always push us to go to the Supreme Court for interpretations. And remember, interpretations are very subjective. And then I could say A, he could say B, she could say C.
Yeah.
And if you are not able to get that particular point, indicating that indeed this is where we are going, then definitely we need to do that. Again, we are 33 years since the Constitution came into power, and I think we are not static. We are not an island. We live with social and human beings. We've gone through so many processes. Many things have been reviewed. So what stops us from also looking at how we can review the Constitution?
Right. So what I was
once we do that,
for,
Prof was asking, Doc was asking, what is the really peculiar reason for...
And I just found that.
All right.
So you see, there was, because I remember watching it on Newsfile. I just couldn't remember the name. So there was a Constitution Review Consultative Committee. And the report was submitted to former President Akufo-Addo. And he even said he would forward it with his notes to the incoming, at that time, he was president-elect. And they're saying that among key recommendations is the removal of Article 68, Clause 5, which exempts presidents from paying taxes on their salaries and emoluments. Now, the person I was looking for is Clara Kasati. That is the chair of that committee. And the committee believes that scrapping this exemption will set a positive example for citizenry to uphold the principle of equality before the law. And it goes on and on. They have the recommended priority list for consideration, like cap on the appointment of ministers of state, the number of members of parliament, constituencies, Articles 78 and 93. Those are the ones that need review. They talk about election of MMDCEs, which is a very topical one. I think that we just toned down on that a bit because in the beginning of this month actually, it was heavy on everyone's mind, whether we should elect them along party lines or not. Yeah. And then they also talk about conditions of service of selected government officials, Article 71 office holders. So there are a lot of things in there that needs to be reviewed. We talk about National Development Planning Commission, what they're doing. Should we be restructuring? They talk about the functions of Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice. What qualifies as fundamental human rights. The story actually is on myjoyonline.com, so you can go there and read it for yourself. So I'm just saying that we've already had a consultative review committee who've come out with some priorities that needs to be looked at.
Yes,
and so that's the work that this committee
were not put into action. They were not used, and now we are setting up another committee to go and look into the same constitution.
No, more like pick up from where the consultative committee left off.
I mean, isn't there some redundancy in this matter? I mean, now that you're actually showing me that there's actually been a committee that's come up with a recommendation, nothing was done with the recommendation, and now we are starting over.
Okay, so I'm just saying that it's a continuous process.
We are revisiting.
Right?
Yeah, revisiting.
Just like the anti-LGBTQ,
Oh, that's
bill
another issue.
That yesterday even came up during some George's.
I only have one question for the Honorable Sam George again. So you knew that at that point when you were campaigning, the members of the NDC have always said they knew they were winning. So you knew you were winning. And so the bill was going to expire. But I think it was just a few weeks before the election, he said he would, President Mahama will have no peace till he signs the bill. So was that all optics and antics for the election or what? Because if at that point you knew that the bill you are talking about is going to expire and you are going to have to do everything again, was that just political talk?
But it didn't expire because, well...
And you see, even that it's a convention.
Parliament passed the bill.
Yes, Parliament passed the bill.
We got to the clerk's table, was supposed to be passed from his table to the president
to
assent. And then,
there were Supreme Court issues.
And I think that's the biggest story is that the president of Ghana decided not to do anything No,
the last Supreme
Court that's the biggest story.
I think it came to an end somewhere like 17 December. At that point, you were telling the government not to issue payments, not to employ people, but he should assess to a bill.
It's not about
No, I'm just saying, you said basically he should not do anything because he's lost
it's not about what they are saying. The people of Ghana gave the president a mandate from 7th January 2021 to 6th January 2024. So it's not an argument to say I did not do what I was mandated to do because they were telling me. In spite of what they were telling him, around 1st January, he issued over 100 966 to 9. So for me, I think the biggest story, you see, because he deliberately ensured that So that's the biggest story. The biggest story is not something.
The application he cited had not been actually filed at the time that the president
cited
that
as a
reason why he couldn't accept
that a bill like that was going to come up against serious human rights.
And so the constitution that he took an oath to protect gave him a procedure by which and that procedure said, listen, receive the bill, make your notes, confer with, he gave him the procedure, but the president, against the clear terms of the oath he himself took. So for me, the biggest story is not what some judge said during campaign. The biggest story is that the president of Ghana, a president we chose, a president who took an oath, at that time, president of Ghana, who took an oath to protect, defend, and preserve the constitution, in spite of the terms of those clear terms, went against the constitution, and that's the biggest story. So I find it very surprising.
To the bill while there was a case in the Supreme Court.
What I'm saying is that
hold on for me. Let me hear you out.
You see, the point I'm trying to make is that the constitution, because like you all rightly said, at a time when he refused to even receive the assent, there was no application before the court. Also, the constitution has given clear direction, has prescribed how a disagreement with the bill ought to be done. You understand? It is a shame and is one of the biggest indictments on this our democracy that the president who took an oath, not only to preserve, but also to defend the constitution, will act in a manner adverse to the clear terms of the constitution. And that is the bigger story, not what some judge said on the campaign platform.
Dr. Mizanyako, let me hear your thoughts on this.
I'm surprised Doc is trying to defend the former president.
No, he's not defending. Okay, Dr.
I'm just making my point.
I'll come to you last because, you know, it's more like this is about you and your administration, so hold on for me.
Her point was that the document did not get to the president.
Yeah.
I don't know where she's getting that from, anyway. But as my friend was saying, I think it's just appropriate that indeed, if you are not really in tune with whatever is being presented on your table, you make notes of what you don't like.
Yeah.
And that is a prerogative of the president.
Yeah.
Once the president has this document, it's okay, A, B, C, D, and E, I don't want it. Or I want further clarification. So I want to send it to a particular committee to look at it and see whether it's appropriate for me to assent. Once that gets there, then you have the opportunity to assent. He deliberately decided to not assent. And that's what he did. And you know what? And I think it's something that is been tabled on the table of the president. Now, and I know for sure, because his stand has always been clear, that he's not in favor of it. And for that matter, he's going to ensure that he would assent. So now, we know it has expired. We need to take it back to Parliament, table it on the...
has it really expired?
Yes, it has. So we have to take it back in there.
If Parliament passed that bill, has it expired?
Yes, because the time that the president was supposed to assent, it did not. The president failed to assent. And for that matter, we need to take it back and then table it for some number. But the point is there's not going to be any moderations or anything or amendments. If indeed we take it to the table of the president and he thinks that we need to amend A, B, C, D, it will come back to Parliament and that will be done.
Well, I've been told I have just about 3 minutes and then we'd have to go. But I know Alban Bagbin is saying that he's going to consult Dr. Dominic Ayene to see how to actually move this bill forward.
Yeah.
As I said, the former president, I think it was prudent that he waited for all the matters with the Supreme Court to be resolved before even considering the bill. And if you look at how much time was left, realistically, when a bill reaches the table of the president, it definitely takes some time before it gets to his attention. In any case, our administration is over. So now it is on you. I don't expect the new president, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, to consider to consider making changes. He said he was going to assent to the bill. It was one of your campaign promises.
Sure.
So now you have to show leadership. And let me just put out, I did find a lot of human rights problems with the bill. So it's not like I'm advocating for it. I'm just advocating for the NDC to do what they campaigned on.
Well, I'm saying that the president will look out for whatever he thinks is not appropriate to be in the bill. And then we will have to take it. And
at
then
that time, he didn't know
Okay, let's end it there. The Ghanaian Times, just some quick headlines to leave you with. The Ghanaian Times newspaper, engage widely with citizens. President urges Constitutional Review Committee. I think we've got into that already.
Yeah,
Safety of GMOs will be evaluated. Environment Minister designates. AG and Minister of Justice withdraws charges against Dr. Ampofo Kwekubuahin. Will protect Ghanaian workers from mistreatment. Labour Minister designates. And I like that. What he said about changing what we call the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission. Yeah. He said we should call it, I think, Productivity and Remuneration or something of the sort, which sort of encompasses what really, Fair Wages and Salaries Commission are supposed to do, whatever your inputs, what your inputs should determine your output in terms of remuneration. The Custodian newspaper, let's have options before banning plastic use, according to Mutala Mohammed. Apenyo Markin grills Mohammed's boy. Is he Mohammed's boy? Over CJ anti-gay bill. Mahama swears in 8-member Constitution Review Committee and African Prosperity Dialogue 2025. Africa needs technology for prosperity. UN Resident Coordinator. These are just some headlines. Pick a copy of the papers for yourself and get into it. Gentlemen and lady, I'll give you each a minute for your final remarks and then we're off. Let me start with you, Apia Dankwa.
So my final remark is, like always, all we have is this democracy. That's the only way in which we can guarantee for ourselves our lives, our right to life, liberty. So let us do everything in our power to sustain it. And we can only sustain it if we create a rights culture. And that, in my view, that the leadership lies on government, especially Parliament. So we should not be seeing acts where they show clear intolerance and attack accountability. Let us come together and build a very strong nation.
Thank you. Dr. Ikia Mwako. Someone says, I can't forget that comment. She's too fine to be doing politics.
That we'll discuss later. I think on that note, I will agree with you. We need to be more accountable and more tolerant of each other. And another thing is to not make statements without proof. Because let me just digress quickly. Yesterday, it's just because of my excitement to see the Honorable Okudzeto Ablakwa being vetted today, because there are a lot of allegations that I hope he has evidence for and can explain today. Because yesterday, Honorable Sam George couldn't provide any evidence to some of the allegations that were made about gold being smuggled out and whatnot. So, because people expect what comes out from certain people to just be gospel. They take it, they see you make a post on X, and they take it as gospel. So let's just be more responsible and only put out things that we verified as the truth.
Thank you. Dr. Mintanyako, you have the final word.
Right, thank you very much. I am also of the opinion that we need to build more emotional intelligence. I think that's what is happening in Parliament. A lot of people are not really tolerant to be able to embrace certain things that are true at them. And if you're able to have that emotional intelligence and be more tolerant, I'm sure the embarrassing event that happened yesterday or early this morning wouldn't have happened. But I'm also of the view that there's the need for us to also look at how we can develop our character, especially across Ghana. It's very important because we are not able to decipher exactly what epitomizes who we are and our ability to really appreciate things that go around us. If you're able to do that, that will also help us to go in a very good direction. The paper I have in front of me, if I need to digress a bit.
Just the headlines, yeah.
Yes. The news center was talking about Senior Husi Defense MFR Hardcastle calls for humility for MPs. Northern voter NDC supporters angry over skewed appointment. Lodina is not influencing appointments. And mobile money hit record Ghana, that's 3 trillion. But then what happens to e-levy?
Question for the board. And then, Dr. Kwamena, well, we have from my immediate left, Andrew Apia Dankwa, legal practitioner and spokesperson for Movement for Change. Dr. Ikia Mwako, Member of Parliament for the member of the NPP Communication. I'm just prophesying. You're going to Parliament. And then Dr. Kwamena Mintanyako, Member of Parliament for Cape Coast North. Thank you all for joining us for the news review segment. I just want to say good morning to my friend Seto at Beacon International School. She's in a very good mood this morning. Hi, Seto. Please stay. Sports comes up next. Thank you.